Hello everyone, and welcome back to the Lostvell Chronicle. Before we begin, take a second to comment where you're listening from, and the exact time you're hearing this story. It's always unsettling to see how far forgotten truths travel, and who they find when they surface. Tonight's case isn't folklore, it isn't frontier myth, and it isn't speculative fiction. It's a story buried beneath granite and wind, a mountain pass where maps lose their meaning, where stone stands in impossible symmetry, and where one man discovered a city that history never recorded. This is the story of a place that was never meant to be found, and of the price paid by the one who did. Dim the lights. Settle in. And let's begin. Dr. Aris Thorne had spent 30 years chasing ghosts. Not spectral apparitions, but the echoes of a civilization that, according to every official record, simply did not exist. His obsession had begun with a faded handwritten journal, discovered in an antique shop in a dusty corner of Wyoming, detailing a city of stone giants hidden deep within the treacherous Whisperwind Pass. Mainstream archaeology had scoffed, dismissing it as frontier folklore, a wild tale spun by prospectors addled by altitude and isolation. But Aris, with his wiry frame and eyes that held the relentless glint of a bloodhound on a scent, knew better. The pass itself was a beast, a labyrinth of jagged granite peaks and canyons, perpetually shrouded in a mournful whistling wind that seemed to carry ancient secrets. It was a place where GPS signals faltered, where the air grew thin and the shadows stretched long and menacing even at midday. For years, Aris had scoured its hidden valleys, armed with nothing but his grandfather's topographical maps, a worn compass, and an unshakable belief. His funding had long since dried up, his academic reputation frayed to a thread, but the whispers of the pass had never ceased to call to him. Today, the whispers had coalesced into a roar. He stood on a precipice, the biting wind tugging at his threadbare jacket, staring down into a basin previously obscured by a particularly cruel rockfall. What he saw defied belief, logic, and every tenet of established history. Below, stretching across the basin floor, was not a natural formation, but something impossibly geometric. Massive, perfectly cut granite blocks, some easily 20 feet high, formed what could only be described as colossal walls, arcing in a pattern that suggested a vast, deliberate structure. They were dark, almost black against the muted greens and greys of the surrounding landscape, their faces eerily smooth, untouched by the millennia of erosion that should have scarred them. These were the Granite Guardians, just as the journal had described. Not natural monoliths, but carved, fashioned, and placed with a precision that mocked primitive tools. There were no discernible chisel marks, no signs of quarrying nearby, no evidence of the human engineering Aris knew. He felt a tremor run through him, not from the cold, but from the sheer, overwhelming impossibility of it all. Who built this? And why had it remained hidden for so long, a colossal secret buried in the heart of America? The questions hammered at him, each one heavier than the last, promising a truth far stranger and more dangerous than any ghost story. He had found his city, but the discovery felt less like a triumph and more like the opening of a forbidden door. The descent into the basin was a slow, deliberate act, each step taken with a reverence usually reserved for hallowed ground. As Aris picked his way down the treacherous slope, the true scale of the structures began to unfold, dwarfing him, making him feel like an insect crawling towards a giant's forgotten toys. The wind, which had been a constant companion, seemed to die down here, replaced by an unnerving, profound silence. It was a silence that felt heavy, ancient, as if the very air held its breath, guarding the secret of the Granite Guardians. Up close, the blocks defied comprehension. They were not merely large, they were monolithic, some stretching 30 feet into the sky, their faces a polished jet-black granite that seemed to absorb the light rather than reflect it. There were no visible mortar lines, no seams where one block met another. They flowed together with an impossible, seamless precision, as if carved from a single, colossal piece of stone. Aris ran a gloved hand over the surface of one wall. It was cold, unnaturally smooth, almost slick, yet felt utterly solid, immovable. His fingers searched for tool marks, for the telltale signs of chisels or hammers, but found nothing. The stone was pristine, an untouched mirror of the sky above, unmarred by the millennia he knew it must have endured. He walked along the base of one curving wall, his boots crunching softly on scree that felt disturbingly out of place next to such perfection. He expected rubble, the detritus of a quarry, discarded tools, anything to suggest human endeavor, but there was nothing, only the smooth, dark stone rising from the earth and the natural, untamed rock of the basin floor. The absence of evidence was more unsettling than any presence could have been. It suggested a construction method so utterly alien, so beyond known human capacity, that it sent a shiver down his spine. Then he saw it. Not a carving, but an indentation, subtle yet deliberate, on the face of one particularly massive block. It was a series of intricate, geometric patterns, almost like circuit boards etched onto the stone, but flowing with an organic grace that defied mechanical precision. They weren't symbols he recognized, nor did they resemble any known ancient script. As he leaned closer, a faint, almost imperceptible hum seemed to resonate from the stone itself, a low thrumming that vibrated deep in his chest. It was a sound that shouldn't exist, a silent song from a dead city. This wasn't just an archaeological marvel, it was something profoundly, terrifyingly other. The whispers of the past had led him not to a forgotten civilization, but to a riddle carved in stone, a silent sentinel of a truth too vast to comprehend. The hum intensified, a low, resonant frequency that seemed to bypass his ears and vibrate directly within his bones. It was a sensation both disorienting and mesmerizing, drawing him closer to the intricate patterns etched into the granite. He pressed his palm flat against the cool, slick surface, feeling the energy thrumming beneath his skin. The geometric designs, initially appearing static, now seemed to pulse with a faint internal luminescence, an ethereal glow that waxed and waned with the rhythm of the hum. This was not merely stone. It was alive, imbued with an unknown power. As his hand remained on the granite, a torrent of fragmented images flickered through his mind. Not a coherent narrative, but flashes, soaring structures that dwarfed these walls, skies filled with strange, silent craft, beings of immense stature moving with an unnerving grace. The images were fleeting, dreamlike, yet carried an undeniable weight of memory, as if they were echoes from the stone itself, imprinted with the history of its creators. Aris stumbled back, gasping, his heart hammering against his ribs. The visions vanished, leaving behind a profound sense of awe mixed with a chilling dread. He was not just observing history. He was touching it, and it was touching him back in a way he couldn't explain. He forced himself to calm, his scientific training kicking in despite the surreal experience. He pulled out his small portable scanner, a device designed to detect minute energy fluctuations and unusual material compositions. The readings were off the charts. The granite, while appearing inert, was emitting a complex energy signature unlike anything he had ever encountered. Not radioactive, not electromagnetic in a conventional sense, but something entirely new, pulsing with a structured, intelligent rhythm. The patterns on the stone, the source of the hum, seemed to be acting as conduits, focusing this energy. Aris realized then that the granite guardians were not just buildings. They were instruments, perhaps even a form of communication or power generation. The sheer scale and alien nature of the technology was staggering. He had spent his life seeking forgotten human cities, but this was something else entirely. The implications were immense, world-altering. He had stumbled upon evidence of an intelligence beyond humanity, a civilization that had once walked this very earth, leaving behind a silent, humming testament to their existence. The wind picked up outside the basin, carrying with it a faint, distant shriek, a sound that seemed to warn him away from the secrets he had just awakened. He was no longer merely an archaeologist. He was a witness, burdened by a truth the world was ill-prepared to hear. The shriek, sharp and piercing, cut through the profound silence of the basin, jolting Aris out of his reverie. It was not the mournful wail of the wind, nor the cry of a mountain predator. This sound was mechanical, distant but approaching, carrying the distinct thrum of rotors. A helicopter. His mind raced. Who knew he was here? He had taken extreme precautions, using old trails, avoiding satellite detection, ensuring his expedition was as invisible as possible. This was his secret, his life's work. The arrival of anyone else, especially a helicopter, was deeply unsettling. He quickly pocketed his scanner, the device still humming faintly, and moved to the edge of the granite wall, pressing himself into its cold, dark shadow. The hum from the stone itself seemed to quiet, as if sensing the intrusion, or perhaps Aris's own sudden need for stealth. He peered cautiously around the corner of the massive block, scanning the sky above the basin rim. Moments later, a sleek black helicopter, devoid of any visible markings, swept into view, its rotors beating the air into a frenzied froth. It was unlike any civilian craft he knew, its design angular and aggressive, hinting at military or specialized government origins. The helicopter circled slowly, systematically, its powerful searchlight cutting through the thin mountain air, sweeping over the basin floor. Aris flattened himself further against the ancient stone, his heart pounding a frantic rhythm against his ribs. He felt a primal urge to flee, to disappear, but there was nowhere to go in the exposed basin. He could only hope the dark granite provided enough camouflage against the powerful beam. The light passed over his position, then circled back, lingering for a moment on the very spot where he had first touched the humming patterns. A cold dread seeped into him. They weren't just searching. They were searching for something specific, and whatever it was connected to the incredible discovery he had just made. The helicopter began to descend, slowly, deliberately, towards the center of the basin, directly over the largest cluster of granite structures. A sudden, blinding flash erupted from the craft, followed by a low, guttural thud that reverberated through the ground. A cloud of dust and debris billowed upwards from the basin floor. They weren't just observing. They were attacking. Aris watched in horror as the black helicopter unleashed another series of flashes, each one followed by a concussive blast. They were attempting to destroy the Granite Guardians, to erase the very evidence of their existence. And in that moment, Aris knew he wasn't just an archaeologist anymore. He was a guardian, and he was in grave danger. The concussive blasts ripped through the air, each explosion a physical blow to Aris's chest, rattling the very granite against which he huddled. Dust and pulverized stone rained down, mingling with the thin mountain air, obscuring his view. The helicopter hovered, a dark, malevolent insect, continuing its assault with unnerving precision. But it wasn't a random bombardment. Aris, squinting through the debris, noticed something crucial. The blasts were concentrated on specific points, particularly where the intricate humming patterns were etched into the stone. They weren't just trying to destroy. They were trying to disable, or perhaps even retrieve something. He had to move. The granite, for all its ancient strength, offered no true shelter against such a targeted attack. His mind raced, recalling the journal, his grandfather's maps. There had to be another way out, a hidden passage, something the original discoverer, his grandfather's mentor, might have found. He remembered a cryptic note scribbled in the margin of one of the old topographical charts, barely legible. The heart whispers through the vein, where the guardian's gaze turns inward. It had made no sense at the time, dismissed as poetic ramblings. Now it resonated with a sudden, chilling clarity. The Granite Guardians were arranged in a vast, sprawling pattern, almost like an open hand. Aris had been at the fingertips. The heart would be the central nexus, the core of the structure. And the vein? He thought of the subtle depressions, the barely perceptible channels he'd seen running along the base of some walls, easy to miss amidst the natural scree. He had assumed them to be natural water runoff channels, but what if they were something more? A path, a conduit leading deeper into the forgotten city. He pushed himself away from the wall, forcing his trembling legs to move. He scrambled over lows. The passage was a tight squeeze, the smooth, cold granite pressing in on all sides, forcing Aris to move sideways, his backpack scraping against the ancient stone. The air grew immediately still and heavy, muffling the sounds of the helicopter's continued search outside. A profound darkness enveloped him, a primal blackness untouched by the sun. He fumbled for his headlamp, its beam cutting a weak, wavering path through the gloom. The vein wasn't just a crack. It was a deliberate, perfectly engineered tunnel, its walls as seamless and featureless as the exterior blocks, but with a subtle downward slope. As he moved deeper, the hum returned, stronger now, resonating through the very rock beneath his feet. It was no longer a distant thrum, but a pervasive, almost melodic vibration that seemed to guide him. The air, though still, carried a faint, sweet scent, like ozone mixed with something metallic and vaguely organic. He pressed on, his hand trailing along the cold wall, feeling for any anomaly, any clue. The visions he'd experienced earlier flickered at the edges of his perception, a sense of immense power and ancient presence growing stronger with every step. The passage opened abruptly into a vast, circular chamber. Aris stopped dead, his headlamp beam sweeping across an impossible sight. At the center of the chamber stood a colossal statue, easily 50 feet tall, carved from the same jet-black granite. It was not a human figure, nor any animal he recognized. It was humanoid in form, but impossibly slender, with elongated limbs and a head that was more angular than rounded, featuring two deep, luminous depressions where eyes should be. This was the true guardian, its silent, imposing presence filling the chamber. As his light played over its surface, the eyes of the statue began to glow with a soft, internal blue light, mirroring the ethereal luminescence he'd seen in the etched patterns outside. The hum intensified, vibrating through the entire chamber, and Aris felt a surge of energy, warm and comforting, yet undeniably alien, wash over him. Then, from the base of the statue, a series of geometric patterns, identical to those on the outer walls, began to pulse with the same blue light, spreading outwards across the chamber floor, forming a complex, glowing mandala. He realized with a jolt that this wasn't just a statue, it was a console, a control center, perhaps even the heart of the entire forgotten city. And it was now active, its gaze turned directly upon him. He had not merely found a city, he had awakened something. The blue light emanating from the Guardian's eyes pulsed rhythmically, mirroring the expanding mandala on the floor. Aris felt an irresistible pull, a profound curiosity overriding his fear. He stepped onto the glowing patterns, the warmth from the stone seeping through his boots, a sensation both strange and strangely comforting. As his foot touched the light, the hum intensified, and a new wave of images, far more vivid and coherent than before, flooded his mind. He saw not just fragmented glimpses, but a narrative, a civilization of beings, tall and graceful, inhabiting a world far beyond Earth. Their technology was organic, flowing, intertwined with their own consciousness. He witnessed their arrival on Earth, not as invaders, but as observers, caretakers. They had built this city, these Granite Guardians, as a sanctuary, a research outpost, a silent library of knowledge. And then he saw the cataclysm. Not a war, but a cosmic event, a disruption that forced their departure, leaving behind their knowledge, their sentinels, and a promise to return. The images faded, leaving Aris breathless, reeling from the sheer scope of what he had just witnessed. It was a history, far grander and more terrifying than any he could have imagined. This wasn't just a forgotten city. It was a cosmic archive, a testament to an intelligence that had predated humanity's rise. And he, Aris Thorne, a lone, ridiculed archaeologist, was now privy to its secrets. But the visions were not without consequence. A sharp, searing pain shot through his temples, a pressure building behind his eyes, as if his mind was struggling to contain the vast influx of alien data. He staggered, clutching his head, the blue light from the Guardian's eyes seeming to bore into his very skull. The hum in the chamber shifted, becoming less melodic, more urgent, almost a warning. He had tapped into something immense. The headache intensified, a relentless throb that threatened to split his skull. The alien knowledge, vast and unbidden, continued to churn within him, a chaotic symphony of images and data streams. He understood now that the visions were not mere psychic impressions, but a direct download, a transfer of information from the Guardian's core into his own consciousness. It was a burden, a superabundance of truth that his human brain struggled to process, causing a dizzying nausea that made the chamber spin around him. He pushed through the pain, forcing himself to focus. The countdown he had seen was flashing in his mind's eye, a series of precise coordinates, a timer ticking down, and a stark, undeniable threat. The black helicopter, or rather the organization behind it, was not simply destroying the outer structures. They were attempting a targeted breach, a surgical strike designed to access the central power matrix of the city. The blasts outside were decoys meant to distract and disorient. Their true objective was this very chamber, the Guardian, and the immense energy it contained. He looked around the chamber, his gaze now sharpened by the alien insight. The glowing mandala on the floor was not merely decorative. It was an interface, a control panel. He saw faint, almost invisible lines radiating from the central Guardian, connecting to various points around the circular room, points that had previously appeared to be nothing more than smooth granite walls. Now he recognized them as concealed doorways, access tunnels leading deeper into the labyrinthine heart of the city. The Guardian's gaze had not just turned inward, but outward, mapping the entire complex within his mind. One particular segment of the mandala pulsed with a brighter, more urgent blue. It corresponded to a section of the wall directly opposite the entrance he had used. This was not just an exit. It was a deeper path, a route into the city's core systems, an escape route, or perhaps a way to fight back. He felt a surge of adrenaline, a primal instinct to protect the ancient knowledge now residing within him. He was no longer just an observer. He was actively involved, a custodian of a cosmic secret. The thud of another distant explosion rattled the chamber, closer this time, sending a shower of fine dust from the ceiling. They were breaching the outer defenses, getting closer. He had to act, and fast. With a newfound determination, Aris staggered towards the pulsing segment of the mandala, his hand outstretched. As his fingers brushed the glowing pattern, the section of the wall before him shimmered, then slid silently inward, revealing a dark vertical shaft, plunging into the unknown depths of the forgotten city. This was the true descent, into the heart of the labyrinth, and into a confrontation with those who sought to claim its power. The shaft plunged downwards, a smooth, dark tunnel that seemed to defy gravity. Aris stepped onto a circular platform that materialized from the floor, glowing with the same internal blue light. It descended silently, smoothly, carrying him deeper into the earth, away from the sounds of the encroaching forces above. The air grew colder, denser, carrying a faint metallic tang. The hum of the city, which had been a constant companion, now shifted, becoming a complex chorus of interwoven frequencies, each distinct, each carrying a fragment of the alien data that continued to overload his mind. He was still battling the headache, the sheer volume of information threatening to overwhelm him, but a strange clarity was also emerging. The architect, as he now understood the ancient builders, hadn't simply constructed a city. They had engineered a vast, interconnected system, a living machine. The Granite Guardians were not inert structures, but conduits, processors, and storage units for an energy source unlike any known to humanity, And the core, the true heart of the city, was a power nexus capable of unimaginable feats. As the platform continued its descent, Aris saw glimpses of the city's internal workings through translucent panels in the shaft walls. Vast cavernous spaces unfolded, filled with intricate crystalline structures that pulsed with soft light, humming with latent energy. He saw what looked like massive dormant machines, their forms organic and flowing, resembling colossal biological organs more than mechanical constructs. This was the true scale of the architect's genius, a fusion of biology and technology, a system designed to be self-sustaining, self-repairing, and almost infinitely powerful. The knowledge gifted to him by the Guardian revealed the true gambit of the architect. They hadn't just left a city behind. They had left a test. A system designed to awaken only when a certain set of conditions were met, or when a specific, compatible consciousness interacted with its core. And he, Aris Thorn, was that consciousness. He was the key, the one who had inadvertently initiated the activation sequence. The external attacks were not just random destruction. They were attempts to force the system to respond, to bypass the architect's intricate safeguards. His headache flared again, a sharp, piercing pain that made him gasp. He saw the faces of the men in dark uniforms, their organization, a shadowy global entity known only as Cerberus, their relentless pursuit of ancient power. They had been tracking the energy signatures of the city for decades, waiting for it to awaken. And now that it had, they would stop at nothing to control it. The platform finally came to a gentle stop. Before him lay a vast circular chamber, dominated by a central obelisk of pure, shimmering energy. This was the true core, the heart of the architect's gambit, and the target of Cerberus. He was at the precipice of a war, armed only with stolen knowledge and a rapidly dwindling amount of time. The energy obelisk pulsed with an ethereal blue light, casting dancing shadows across the vast chamber. Aris felt an overwhelming sense of both awe and dread. This was the nexus, the source of the city's power, the very heart of the architect's forgotten legacy. But his moment of wonder was shattered by a chilling realization, a new fragment of information that tore through the chaos in his mind, clearer and more painful than any before. The images flashed. A face he knew, a name he trusted. Dr. Evelyn Reed, his former colleague, his closest confidant in the academic world, the only person he had ever truly shared his theories with, even if she had always maintained a healthy skepticism. He saw her, not in a laboratory, but in a dimly lit room, speaking with the men in dark uniforms, Cerberus operatives. Her voice, calm and measured, detailing his movements, his research, his obsession with Whisperwind Pass. She had provided them with his coordinates, his patterns of travel, the very information that had led the black helicopter to him. The betrayal hit him with the force of a physical blow, worse than any explosion. Evelyn, the one person he had believed in, the one person who had pretended to support his wild goose chase. She hadn't scoffed to protect her reputation. She had scoffed to mislead him, to keep him isolated, to ensure he would be the only one to find the city, and then to lead Cerberus directly to it. The sophisticated tracking, the precise targeting of the humming patterns. It all made sense now. She knew his theories, knew exactly what he would look for, where he would go. A cold, bitter anger, sharper than any mountain wind, replaced his fear. He had been a pawn, an unwitting key to unlock a treasure for forces he could barely comprehend. The pain in his head intensified, not just from the alien data, but from the crushing weight of personal trayet. Cherry. He saw Evelyn's face again. Her smile, her encouraging words, all of it a lie, a carefully constructed facade to manipulate him. The Granite Guardians, once a symbol of ancient wonder, now seemed to mock him, their silent, impassive faces reflecting his foolish trust. But within the torrent of betrayal, another image solidified. Evelyn, standing over an ancient leather-bound journal, his grandfather's journal, the very one that had started his quest. She hadn't just given Cerberus information. She had been feeding it to them for years, meticulously cultivating his path to this very moment. She wasn't just a mole. She was the architect of his unwitting discovery, the handler who had guided him to activate the city. He was not just in danger from Cerberus, he was in danger from the very person who had set him on this path, a betrayal carved not in stone, but in the heart of his life's work. The hum of the energy obelisk suddenly shifted, rising in pitch, becoming a shrill, piercing whine that grated on Aris's nerves. The blue light intensified, bathing the chamber in an unearthly glow, and the air crackled with raw, untamed power. The betrayal by Evelyn Reed still burned, a cold ember in his gut, but it was quickly overshadowed by the immediate, overwhelming threat. The knowledge from the Guardian, fragmented though it was, coalesced into a stark warning. The city's defense protocols were now fully active, but they were also being dangerously manipulated. He looked up, his gaze drawn to the ceiling of the vast chamber. A section of the smooth granite, directly above the obelisk, began to shimmer, then slowly retract inward, revealing a gaping maw. Through the opening, he could see the faint, distant glow of the moon and the unmistakable, menacing silhouette of the black helicopter, hovering directly overhead. They had found the true entrance, the direct vertical access to the core. The blasts and diversions on the surface had bought them the time to position themselves, to bypass the labyrinth, and to spring their trap. A low, mechanical whirring sound descended from the opening, growing louder, closer. A sleek, metallic capsule, armed with an array of sensors and what looked like energy emitters, slowly lowered itself into the chamber. It wasn't designed for human transport. It was a specialized extraction device, built to interface directly with the energy obelisk, to siphon its power, to steal the heart of the city. Cerberus wasn't just here to destroy or observe. They were here to seize. Aris felt a sudden, profound surge of the alien data, a direct interface with the city's internal systems. The architect's gambit, he now understood, had a final, desperate failsafe. If the core was breached, if the power was threatened by an incompatible entity, the red countdown pulsed relentlessly in Aris's vision, each digit a hammer blow to his already fractured composure. The extraction capsule hovered inches above the energy obelisk, its metallic tendrils extending, seeking purchase. The air in the chamber crackled, thick with the scent of ozone and the terrifying hum of unstable power. He was face to face with an impossible choice: allow Cerberus to seize a power that would undoubtedly be weaponized, or initiate a cataclysmic overload that would erase the city and himself from existence. But amidst the panic, a new fragment of the architect's data surfaced, a buried subroutine, a last-ditch option. The city's self-preservation sequence wasn't purely destructive. It had a bypass, a hidden function designed for a specific, dire scenario. The core wouldn't just explode. It could be reconfigured, its vast energy redirected, not to annihilate, but to create a localized protective field, a temporary, impenetrable barrier that would shield the city, effectively turning it invisible to external detection and sealing it off from the world. It would buy time, perhaps decades, centuries, for another awakening, another chance. The cost, however, was immense. To activate this bypass, Aris would have to directly interface with the obelisk, to become the conduit for its raw energy. It would be a profound, agonizing connection, one that would likely push his human physiology beyond its limits. He would be fused, in a sense, with the city, his consciousness entwined with its ancient systems, and the activation would require a significant portion of the city's power, meaning it would enter a dormant state, its hum silenced, its light extinguished, perhaps for good. He looked up at the hovering capsule, then down at the energy obelisk, its blue light flickering erratically now, responding to the attempted breach. He pictured Evelyn's face, her betrayal, and the grim faces of the Cerberus operatives. They sought to dominate, to control, to corrupt. The architect's legacy deserved a better fate. It deserved to remain a secret, a sleeping giant, waiting for a time when humanity might be ready for its truth. With a deep, shuddering breath, Aris made his choice. He staggered towards the obelisk, ignoring the searing pain in his head, ignoring the frantic warning of the countdown. He reached out, his hand trembling, towards the shimmering column of pure energy. As his fingers made contact, a blinding flash erupted, and a wave of unimaginable power surged through him, fusing his consciousness with the very heart of the Granite Guardians. The extraction capsule recoiled violently, its systems overloading, as the chamber was enveloped in an ethereal blue light, not of destruction, but of profound, silent protection. The city was withdrawing, pulling itself back from the precipice, its truth now buried once more beneath a new kind of rubble. The blinding flash consumed the chamber, a silent explosion of pure blue light that surged from the obelisk and Aris Thorn, who was now inextricably linked to its core. A deafening silence followed, not the absence of sound, but a profound void, as if the very air had been sucked out of existence. The pervasive hum of the city, which had been Aris's constant companion, ceased abruptly. The glowing mandala on the floor flickered, then died, plunging the vast chamber into an oppressive darkness. The energy obelisk itself dimmed, its ethereal glow receding, leaving only a faint, internal pulse, like a dying heartbeat. Aris felt himself pulled apart, then reassembled, his consciousness expanding, merging with the ancient sleeping intelligence of the city. He was everywhere and nowhere, a whisper in the stone. High above, at the apex of the breached chamber, the black helicopter lurched violently as the extraction capsule, now sparking and smoking, was ripped upwards, its tendrils severed. On board, Commander Thorn, a man whose surname was a cruel irony, snarled into his comms. "What happened? Report. I want eyes on the target now." But there was nothing to see. The gaping maw in the granite ceiling, which had revealed the city's core moments before, now shimmered with an invisible, impenetrable barrier. The powerful floodlights of the helicopter simply diffused against it, unable to penetrate. On a portable command console set up on a rocky outcrop overlooking the basin, Dr. Evelyn Reed stared at the sudden, catastrophic energy readings. The city, which had been broadcasting an immense escalating power signature, had flatlined. It was gone. Not destroyed, not overloaded, but gone. Her carefully constructed plan, years in the making, had vanished in an instant. Her face, usually a mask of calm, scientific detachment, contorted with a mixture of shock and incandescent. "What? He did it," she whispered, her voice tight with disbelief. "The fool. He actually did it." She understood the architect's bypass, had theorized it, but never believed Aris would possess the suicidal conviction to enact it. He hadn't just shut down the city, he had sealed it, made it utterly inert, invisible, and inaccessible, and in doing so, he had taken himself with it. Her key, her unwitting pawn, had turned the lock on himself, denying Cerberus, and by extension, her, the ultimate prize. Commander Thorn's voice crackled through her earpiece, laced with fury. "Reed! Explain this! We had it! What did your pet archaeologist do?" Evelyn looked out at the now silent basin, the colossal Granite Guardian standing impassive under the moonlight. The silence was heavier than any roar. Aris had outmaneuvered them all, not by fighting, but by becoming the city itself, pulling it into an eternal slumber. The confrontation wasn't with a man anymore, but with a ghost, an echo in the stone that had just ensured its secrets would remain forever buried. The profound silence that followed the city's withdrawal was more terrifying than any explosion. Evelyn Reed, her face a mask of disbelief and fury, watched the energy readings on her console flatline, confirming the impossible. The Granite Guardians, America's forgotten city, had simply vanished from all detection. Aris Thorne, her unwitting tool, her brilliant, naive key, had sealed it all away. He had chosen to become one with the Architect's legacy, rather than allow Cerberus to corrupt it. Commander Thorne's voice, a snarl of pure frustration, ripped through her earpiece. "Reed! What in God's name happened? Where is it? Where is Thorne?" Evelyn finally tore her gaze from the dead console, turning to face the commander, who had just landed his helicopter near her observation post. His face was thunderous, his dark uniform bristling with authority. "He activated the failsafe, Commander," she said, her voice strained. "The city initiated a complete energy redistribution, creating a localized, undetectable pocket dimension. It's gone, and so is he." Thorne stared at her, his eyes narrowed to slits. "A pocket dimension? You expect me to believe that fairy tale? He destroyed it, didn't he? After all our investment, all our tracking, all your careful manipulation." He stepped closer, his imposing figure casting a long shadow over her. "You led us to believe he would be the perfect conduit, the one to unlock its power. Instead, he sealed it away, and himself, forever." Evelyn felt a tremor of fear, not for Aris, but for herself. She had gambled everything on Aris's predictable academic obsession, on his moral compass that would prioritize discovery over self-preservation. She had underestimated the depth of his conviction, the power of the alien knowledge that had transformed him. "He acted outside parameters, Commander. The Architect's systems are more complex than we anticipated. He chose preservation over exploitation." "He chose defiance!" Thorne roared, his fist slamming onto her console, cracking the screen. "And you, Dr. Reed, are responsible for this colossal failure. Years of Cerberus resources wasted on your pet project, your brilliant insights. We needed that power, Reed, to secure our future, to ensure global stability." Evelyn felt a cold dread seep into her bones. The Guardian's reckoning wasn't just for Aris, it was for her too. She had sought to control an ancient power, to wield it for what she believed was the greater good. But in her hubris, she had unleashed an unpredictable force. Aris had not just vanished. He had sent a message, a silent, powerful rebuke to their ambitions. The Granite Guardians had judged them, found them unworthy and withdrawn, taking their secrets and their new guardian into an inaccessible eternity. The price of their failure, Evelyn realized with a sickening lurch, was about to be exacted. Commander Thorne's rage was a palpable force, radiating from him like heat from a forge. His cracked console screen reflected the flickering lights of the helicopter, illuminating Evelyn Reed's pale, drawn face. "Global stability, Reed. You speak of stability when you've just lost us the most powerful asset on the planet. Do you have any idea what this means for Cerberus? For my career?" His voice dropped to a dangerous whisper. "For your life?" Evelyn swallowed, the metallic taste of fear coating her tongue. "The Architect's technology was never meant to be a weapon, Commander. It was a library, a sanctuary. Aris understood that. He made a choice to protect it, to deny its corruption." She clutched at the last vestiges of her self-justification, a desperate attempt to frame her actions, and Aris's, as something more noble than simple failure. Thorne scoffed, a harsh, humorless sound. "Corruption? We were going to control it, Dr. Reed. Harness it for humanity's advancement. You saw the projections, the energy output, the potential for seismic stabilization, for global communication, for clean, limitless power. And you let your sentimental fool of an archaeologist bury it because he had a change of heart?" He stepped even closer, his eyes glinting with a cold, predatory light. "Or perhaps," he mused, "you had a change of heart too, Dr. Reed. Perhaps you intended to keep some of that power for yourself, once Aris had done all the hard work." The accusation hung heavy in the frigid air, cutting through Evelyn's carefully constructed composure. Her breath hitched. This was the final revelation, not just for Thorn, but for herself. She had always told herself she was working for the greater good, for the advancement of humanity, using Cerberus as a means to an end. But the truth, raw and ugly, was that she had been seduced by the power, by the unique knowledge, the desire to be the one to truly understand and control it. Aris was merely the shovel. She intended to be the architect of its utilization. "No," she managed, her voice barely a whisper. "I believed." "You believed you were smarter than us all," Thorn interrupted, a cruel smile spreading across his face. "You believed you could play both sides. You cultivated Aris, nurtured his obsession, used his journal to guide him, all while feeding us just enough to keep our interest. You were the true architect of this gambit, Dr. Reed. And you failed." He signaled to two dark-clad operatives who emerged from the shadow of the helicopter. They moved with silent, efficient menace. Evelyn felt a chilling certainty settle over her. Aris had found his reckoning within the stone. Her own reckoning was now here, under the cold, indifferent gaze of the Whisperwind Pass, at the hands of the very organization she had sought to manipulate. The secrets of the Granite Guardians were safe, but the price of their safeguarding was about to be paid in full. The two Cerberus operatives moved with practiced efficiency, seizing Evelyn Reed without a word. Her protests died in her throat, strangled by the cold reality of her situation. Commander Thorn watched, his expression grimly satisfied, as they led her towards the waiting helicopter. The wind, which had been a constant, mournful presence throughout the Whisperwind Pass, now seemed to howl a lament for her ambition and her failure. The immense, dark forms of the Granite Guardians stood silent and impassive below, an eternal monument to a truth humanity was not yet ready to comprehend. Thorn turned his gaze back to the basin, where the invisible barrier now shimmered faintly under the moon. A ghost of the city, Aris Thorn, had sealed away. He knew Cerberus would expend vast resources trying to penetrate it, to understand it, to find another way to access the power that now lay dormant. But he also knew, with a certainty that chilled him, that it would be in vain. Aris, with his impossible act of self-sacrifice, had not just hidden the city. He had merged with it, becoming its final, impenetrable guardian. The knowledge, the power, the very essence of the architect's legacy was now entwined with a human consciousness, one that had chosen silence over exploitation. Years would pass. The story of Dr. Aris Thorn would fade into obscurity. Another eccentric academic lost to the unforgiving mountains. Cerberus would continue its shadowy operations, always searching, always grasping for power. But a crucial piece of the puzzle, the greatest prize, would forever elude them. The Whisperwind Pass would reclaim its solitude, the whistling winds carrying only natural sounds, no longer the low, resonant hum of an alien city. But deep within the earth, within the heart of the now silent Granite Guardians, something profound had occurred. Aris Thorn's consciousness, expanded beyond human limits, had become one with the ancient intelligence. He was not truly gone, but transformed, a silent sentinel, a living archive. He experienced the slow geological pulse of the planet, the subtle shifts of tectonic plates, the ebb and flow of cosmic energies. He was the city, and the city was him, a testament to a forgotten civilization, protected by an unlikely hero. The world above would continue, oblivious to the cosmic truth buried beneath the mountains. The Granite Guardians of Whisperwind Pass, America's forgotten city built by unknown hands, remained a secret. Its silence was absolute, a profound, enduring testament to the architect's wisdom and Aris Thorn's ultimate act of guardianship. The whispers had ceased, replaced by the eternal, unyielding silence of a truth too vast for the world, held safe within the heart of the stone. What you've just heard isn't a legend meant to entertain, and it isn't a mystery with a clean ending. It's a reminder. Some knowledge isn't lost by accident. Some places are hidden because they must remain hidden. And some guardians aren't born. They're chosen by circumstance. Whisperwind. Pass still howls with wind. The granite guardians still stand, unseen, and somewhere beneath the stone, a consciousness remains awake, watching, waiting. If this story stayed with you, comment where you're listening from and the exact time you're hearing this outro. Until next time, sleep lightly.